We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Tuesday. Still no indictments, but a lot of shit happening. Some interesting things that we're going to talk about later in the program. Got some emails to tend to. But before we get to that, I want to talk about one particular listener or viewer or whatever you want to call them in this case. You can either listen to the audio or listen and view the video. It doesn't really matter. But this is a woman who was really the impetus behind me getting that PO box. Remember, I told you that people had asked me about it, and I didn't understand why that would be important, but I did go and get a PO box, and I have one. And as I mentioned in the last podcast, Fred, who's been a guest on the show and will be a guest soon, um, sent my wife and I a Culver's gift card, which we used yesterday. My wife and I went to Culver's yesterday. So thanks for lunch, Fred. I appreciate it. But there was another woman who really was, as I say, the impetus for getting the P.O. box. Her name was, or is, Gigi. And she said she likes to send people care packages. And I said, well, I appreciate that, but that's not really necessary. I'm not asking people to send me anything. And but she said she wanted to. So I said, okay, here's the P.O. box. Thanks very much. Well, she sent me the care package. And it was very sweet, very generous. And I was taken aback by it for a number of reasons. There was some cookies, and I'll show you those in a minute. They're not all there anymore because I ate a bunch of them. And don't ask me to show them tomorrow because they'll be gone. But anyway, she sent me a number of things. In fact, she sent me this hat. I wear these hats all the time. And I never used to wear hats a lot, but until I started doing things on camera, I thought, I could take my hat off. I don't have a lot of hair anymore, and that never really bothered me. I'm not self-conscious about it. But this kind of evens out the picture a little bit with the hat. Well, this hat, she sent me this hat amongst other things. And what I like about this hat especially, what do you notice different about this hat than any other hat I wear? No other hat I wear has anything on it. It's blank. And the reason I do that, there's a very specific reason I do that, is because I use the rear facing camera on my phone when I do TikToks. And I think it even does it with this thing with the video podcast. But if I got something that says words on it, it's going to be backwards and it's going to drive me nuts. My son asked me that question one time, and I told him that's why, because I don't want it to be backwards when I'm on video. He goes, that's really weird that you would even think of that. I go, well, I used to run a recording studio and do productions and stuff. You have to think about a lot of things. And, I was never a big hat wearer, but if I'm going to wear one, it doesn't have to be promoting something. But Gigi sent me this hat, and it does have something on there, but no words. So this doesn't look backwards. It's a lobster. And it makes sense that she would send that to me because she lives in Massachusetts. I'm not going to give the actual city she lives in, but it's a known city in Massachusetts. I don't want people trying to track her down or whatever, or try to get hats from her. She's not a hat salesperson, but she sent this to me in the care package, and it's wonderful, and I appreciate it. She sent me a card too, and I'll read it to you. It says, "Dear Mike, this is your promised care package. I send out gifts for many reasons: to heal people, to make them smile, or in your case, to say thank you. My husband, John, and I wake up every day to you. You help us to stay sane in this crazy time. Keep talking. Love, Gigi." Then she put a PS up here. It says, "If you ever find yourself in America's hometown, our door is always open. And we have a beach." Well, that's a nice invitation. A little crazy to get some guy from the internet. Yeah, come by the house, fucking stay for a while. Anyway, Gigi, thank you very much for it. I was just going to show you some of the other stuff she sent me. She actually sent my wife this apron. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But my wife and I got a good laugh out of this because what you don't know is my wife doesn't cook. She's never cooked. I always have done the cooking. In fact, if my kids are over and they're having dinner with us or something, first thing they'll ask, go, Who cooked that? If my wife cooked it, they're saying we're going out to dinner. If I cooked it, they're fine with it. Now, I don't want to say that my wife's a horrible cook. She's not a horrible cook. She's just not really into it. And I like cooking, so it worked out. Now, Gigi's very thoughtful. She also sent this. And now this will be backwards, I think. No, it's not. It's different. It's a little book called I Am Empowered. And I presume she sent this for my granddaughter, Junie. That was very nice. Junie will get this. And then the coup de grace, she said she would send some baked goods, which she did. She sent me these cookies. One is oatmeal, one is chocolate chip. I love them both. Oatmeal is what my mom and my grandmother made all the time I was young. Chocolate chip, who doesn't like fucking chocolate chip cookies? I've tried them. They're fucking awesome, Gigi, and I appreciate it very much. And as I said, I ate a bunch already. My wife ate a couple of them. And I'd give you a progress report for tomorrow's to how many we ate through the day today, but I guarantee you they will be gone before I get back to doing the Rational Boomer podcast for tomorrow. Anyway, Gigi, thank you very much for the care package. It was wonderful, very thoughtful, very sweet, and I appreciate it immensely, and I will wear this hat. I wear different hats every day, so I won't wear it every day, but you'll see it here on the Rational Boomer podcast. Now, of course, some of you listening to the Rational Boomer podcast only listen to the audio, and you couldn't see anything I just said to you. You can go to YouTube and see the first 5 minutes and see what I was talking about, then go back to the audio if you want. But it's on the video podcast, so we got that going for us. Again, thanks, Gigi. I appreciate it. All right, let's get to some emails. First one comes from Jace from Texas. He's been on the show a number of times. He's written a number of emails. It's always great to hear his insight. He's one of the young folks that listen to the podcast, and I appreciate that. Hey, Mike, another day of hearings and the GOP trying to get shit on Joe, and another failed. Of course, Fox and other right-wing con artists will try and spin it their way, and the Trumplafucks will believe it. The Archer testimony is another false flag. Womp, womp. Or is that womp, womp? That's maybe what he meant. Now, it makes sense. It was behind closed doors. You had some great guests, as always, and I would love to come on the show again. Texas is always a dumpster fire we can discuss amongst other topics. Looking forward to talking with you again, Jace from Texas. Jace, you're welcome anytime. Just send me the email, tell me when, and you're on. No problem. Same with Fred. Fred's been talking about coming on. In fact, I think I was talking to Jace earlier. He may be on Saturday. So look forward to that. Anyway, the thing about the hearing today, you make a good point about that. With all the stuff going on with Donald Trump, all the evidence and the witnesses and all this shit, of course, the Republicans don't want to be outdone, so they have another hearing, in spite of the fact that all their hearings have been a complete bust. They are embarrassed every time they have a hearing. What they did is they brought in a former associate of Hunter Biden. Oh, yeah, this is it. We're going to nail him. We're going to nail him. And they bring this guy in, and they have him testify behind closed doors. I'm guessing because they weren't sure what was going to come out of it. This is the interesting thing. They keep getting embarrassed in hearings. And, for my money, if I'm going to do something like that, and I hope to accomplish something, I might vet these motherfuckers beforehand, maybe know what's going to come out of this instead of being embarrassed. But apparently that's not a thing with the Republicans. Anyway, they bring this Archer guy, Devin Archer, in, and they talk to him. And when the hearing is over, Jim Jordan comes out and they say, "What happened? What happened?" And Jim Jordan goes, "Yeah, it was productive." Yeah, if it was anything, he would have been ranting and raving. Well, Dan Goldman, another representative in the House who happens to be Democrat, who happens to be a former prosecutor, who happened to be working on the impeachment backaways against Donald Trump. He said they talked for 2 hours and it was another joke because they were not able to connect Hunter Biden's business with Joe Biden. Now, Dan Goldman said that they did say that Hunter and Joe talked a lot on the phone, and sometimes when he was around business associates, he would put it on speakerphone. He's doing a bunch of drugs. He's got shit going on. He's trying to be a little douchey, trying to impress people. So puts Dad, the vice president, on speakerphone. But what Devin Archer said is not once in all of those times was there any business discussed. It was very generic, very, niceties like weather and how you doing, how you feeling. What you have to understand is a lot of these phone calls came around the time of Hunter Biden's brother and Joe Biden's son's death, Beau Biden. He died of cancer. That was a tragic situation. And apparently Hunter and Joe are very close and they're trying to support one another. Both were having a hard time of it. But through it all, there was no talk of business, no talk of bribery, no talk of $5 million, nothing like that. And what's funny is before that hearing happened on Fox News, you would hear people saying, oh, this is it. They're going to finally get Joe Biden. He's done. Once they talk to this guy, it's over. And once again, it's kind of like Lucy who pulled the football out from under Charlie Brown when he tried to kick it. Now, you have to be old to remember that reference too. But every time they have a hearing, these alleged whistleblowers or witnesses, they always pull the rug out from underneath the Democrats or the Republicans. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but isn't it true that, most of the people in the House of Representatives, there's a lot of lawyers there, but isn't it true that a lawyer is never supposed to ask a question he doesn't always know the answer for? Well, these fucks in the House of Representatives on the Republican side apparently didn't get the memo because they are surprised every fucking time. All right, thanks, Jace, and hopefully you'll be on the show Saturday. People will be looking forward to it. You always have some great insights, and we need to talk about Texas. I'm going to bring that up in a second. Next email, the last email comes from Roy. He said, appreciate your TikTok on this. Sad. The only thing I can say of Pee Wee Herman is, I know you are, but what am I? Infinity. We're going to talk about Pee Wee Herman. And it was sad to hear that he passed away. And that was his famous line, I know you are, but what am I? Which nobody ever imagined that the Republicans would take on as a motto. I mean, that's what they do. I know you are, what am I? I didn't do anything wrong. You did it, projection and all that shit. Yeah, we'll talk about Pee Wee Herman in a little bit. Now, as I said, there are no indictments, but it sounds like we're getting very close in both Georgia and the DOJ with Jack Smith regarding the January 6th situation. Now, Fani Willis was interviewed yesterday, I believe, or maybe it was the day before, and she said a couple of things. She said, we're done with our work and we're ready to go. Well, that's interesting. Because as of yesterday, she made sure all her people, 70% of her people were staying home. They tried to open up the courts. They've got the barriers out there. So something's going to happen soon. Now, yesterday when she was talking, she said that she will definitely be making an announcement before September 1st. But she also said that she has special security the week of the 7th and the week of the 14th. And I think a lot of us have thought that she is going to announce first or second week of August. And that would kind of make sense. If you're going to announce that you're issuing some indictments, you don't want to give them the exact day and get them ready for it and pull some bullshit. You say, you know, we're going to do it by September 1st and then do it August 7th or 14th or 15th or whatever. That's probably what's going to happen. It's probably going to come shortly after Jack Smith announces his indictments for the January 6th situation. Now, we'd expected that last Friday, possibly. The grand jury for Jack Smith will be sitting and getting together, reconvening, if you will, on Tuesday and on Thursday of this week, technically. Maybe not Thursday. If they issue the indictments on Tuesday, then they'll be done. So we'll see what happens. My gut tells me that it's going to be this week because Fani Willis is going to want to go after Jack Smith, and that doesn't leave a lot of time. There isn't a very big window there. I mean, a lot of people will come on TikTok or in the podcast or in the media for that matter and make predictions. It's definitely coming Tuesday. It's definitely coming Thursday. If anybody says they know for sure when this is going to happen, well, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. It's just not the case. I don't know. I can take educated guesses based on the facts that we know, look at things logically. Logically speaking, the grand jury is set to meet on Tuesday and on Thursday. Theoretically, it would happen one of those days or the days after, so Wednesday or Friday. I don't know when it's going to happen. All I know is it's going to happen. There's no question about it. There's just too much dirt on Donald Trump and the people around him. And I suspect ultimately we will get all kinds of indictments, not just Donald Trump, not just his inner circle. We're talking sitting members of Congress, his buddies like Giuliani and Meadows and Ginny Thomas. I can't believe any of those would be left out at this point. But we don't know. We honestly don't know. And I will always tell you when I don't know. But the moment it happens, trust me, I'll be all over that shit. We'll be talking about it on TikTok and on the podcast and everything. All I know is it is coming, and it's coming soon. That's the best I can do. All right. Interesting thing about Special Counsel Jack Smith and his team. They revealed the existence of additional CCTV footage in a new filing detailing evidence produced for ex-President Donald Trump's defense team. Now, the news broke last Thursday afternoon that Special Counsel Jack Smith had filed 3 additional charges against Trump, 1 additional count on unlawful retention of national defense information, and 2 new obstruction counts based on allegations that Trump and co-defendants Walt Nada and Carlos de Oliveira attempted to delete surveillance video footage at the Mar-a-Lago club in the summer of 2022. Now, Carlos de Oliveira, the third co-defendant, he appeared in court yesterday. I don't know if they could run the arraignment because he didn't have a lawyer as yet, which is weird. It's just a ploy to kill time. The interesting thing is that de Oliveira's lawyer, whoever that is, well, he had a lawyer, but he wasn't from Florida. They need a Florida lawyer, but it's being paid by Donald Trump, so he's obliged to Donald Trump. The same goes for Walt Nada. And the reason Donald Trump does this is to keep them close and keep them obliged so they don't flip on him. And it seemed like Walt Nada was being pretty strong about not flipping on him. So then you imagine this Carlos de Oliveira comes in and you think, well, he's kind of a low-level guy. Why would they bring him in? And I have to believe the de Oliveira is kind of a bit of leverage to get Nada to cave, because I would think that de Oliveira has the goods on Nada, and this guy could end up being a long time in jail unless he cuts some deal. So they're trying to push Nada to flip on Donald Trump, and we'll see if this works. It was really weird. Donald Trump wanted them to delete the surveillance videos, and they wanted to do this shortly after these videos were subpoenaed by the DOJ, so they were clearly running around like chickens with their heads cut off to save their ass at the direction of Donald Trump. Now, these two clowns, Nauta and De Oliveira, had no clue what they were doing. They were really deep in the espionage shit about all this. They were meeting in bushes and don't want to be seen together and all this shit. Then they pulled in a fourth guy. He's an IT guy, and unfortunately, the IT guy couldn't even pull it off. Like I've said before, it's like the Apple Dumpling gang out there, or the gang that can't shoot straight. They couldn't get anything done, and of course, Jack Smith ended up getting the footage. But a new filing posted on Monday reveals that Smith's team has produced additional footage that Trump's team didn't have before. Now, per the protective order issued in this case, it's numbered ECF number 27, the government has provided two prior productions of discovery to defendants Donald J. Trump and Walt Nauta. The government provided a third production of unclassified discovery to counsel for defendants Trump and Nauta. Now, once counsel for defendant Carlos de Oliveira enters an appearance, the government will promptly provide the three productions to his counsel. Production 3 includes additional CCTV footage, location, and other data obtained pursuant to a search warrant. Additional memorialization of witness interviews and grand jury transcripts to facilitate review. The government also identified and separately produced for the defense key excerpts from the CCTV footage. Now, the fact of the matter is there's a ton of shit here, and none of it is good for Donald Trump or anybody else that's tied to this fucking thing. This is what I'm saying. The evidence is so clear. Donald Trump has no chance of defending against it. Like I've said before, it seems like Donald Trump's only defense is that he's going to win the presidency and then he's going to pardon himself. Well, that's a Hail Mary pass. That's a fucking long shot. He has no chance of winning the presidency. He may not even win the nomination. I know he's way ahead, but as I've said before, this guy's going to have a lot of shit hanging over his head. He's going to have multiple indictments, over 100 charges. He's going to have a few lawsuits. This fucking clown is going to be going to court appearances like every other fucking day. When's he going to have time to mount a campaign? Now, maybe on the Republican side, he doesn't have to. They love him so much that they'll vote for him no matter where he is. But he's got another problem. He's got a money problem. It's been reported that he took $40 million out of one of his PACs and spent it on legal fees. $40 million since January 1 of 2023. 7 months he spent $40 million. Now keep in mind, he didn't collect that much in the last quarter, so he's burning through money quick. And we can tell that he's having money problems because there's another PAC that they gave $60 million. Now he's trying to claw that shit back and use that to pay legal fees. I wonder how the people that follow Donald Trump, that want to see him be president, wonder what they would think if they knew that the money they spent isn't going for him to become president, but just to save his ass in court cases. Now, here's the other thing to consider. This is the other thing to consider. He's only got, three or four indictments, a bunch of charges, but he's going to have at least that many more very soon, like in the next week or two. If he spent $40 million in 7 months for his legal fees, you tack on these new charges and whatever else happens, those legal costs are going to go up. And of course, lawyers nowadays are hip to the fact that Donald Trump doesn't pay his bills, so he's going to have to pay up front. So he needs to continue to grift money, and he needs to take money from his PACs. And I don't even know if that's legal. That may be a whole campaign finance situation. I don't know, but that's pretty minor compared to all the other shit hanging over his head. But Donald Trump is finding himself in a position where a lot of us have found ourselves. He's never had to worry about it before. And I know because I've been in this position before, where you're making a pretty good amount of money, but you're spending more than you have. And for a while, you can juggle it, you can balance it, and you're just hanging by a thread at that point. But you can't do it forever. So what ultimately happens is you crash and burn, and the money stops, and it's a fucking mess. And that's where Donald Trump is headed right now. He can't maintain this. He's got no money, or the money he does have, he's burning through so fast he can't recoup it and replace it. So he's going to come to a point where he doesn't have nearly enough money to even pay for a defense. Then what happens? Things are going downhill so badly for Donald Trump with all the indictments and all the charges and the money issues. He is scraping the bottom of the barrel. He's trying to do everything he can, and nothing, not a fucking thing is working. He's going to crash, and he's not going to last. That's inevitable. And that's why I say, forget about the trials and the convictions, should there be convictions, and there most certainly will. That's not even something we have to worry about. Some of these trials may not come till after 2024, but that's okay. At least one of these trials will happen before 2024. We know the Manhattan District is set to start in March, and there probably won't be any fudging to delay that one. I have a real feeling that the January 6th indictments are going to bring trials before the classified documents case down in Florida. And the reason I say that is a couple of reasons. First of all, with the January 6th trial, you don't have to fuck around with the classified documents and get people certified to read these documents. That's not part of it. That sucks up a lot of time in the classified documents case. Secondly, the judges in D.C., they aren't going to be Donald Trump's buddies. They aren't going to side with him like Aileen Cannon down in Florida might. We still don't know if she will, but she could. But the people in D.C., they aren't going to. They're going to run this fucking thing as quickly as they can, and it won't matter what happens with the Mar-a-Lago case. I mean, it may end up, if he gets convicted with even one count in Manhattan and even one count in the J6 investigation, he's fucking done. He's absolutely fucking done. There's no way he can get out from underneath that. Now, the Manhattan District, some of those charges call for a maximum penalty of 4 or 5 years. That doesn't sound like a lot, but he'll be 78 in 2024. He's not healthy of mind, not healthy of body. He's losing it. His cognitive abilities are going by the wayside. Even if he's put in jail or locked down somehow for 4 or 5 years, that's going to be the end for Donald Trump. Now, people will say to me, well, what about if he can run for president while he's in jail? Well, for many of those charges, that is true, only because there is nothing in the Constitution that precludes him from running for president if he's in jail. And Donald Trump has said as much, that if I'm in jail, I will run for president. He was asked that in an interview, and that struck me as strange because that answer is not the answer of a narcissist. If you ask Donald Trump, are you going to run from prison if you're convicted and sent to prison? Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That's not how Donald Trump or any narcissist would answer that typically. They would say, oh, I'm not going to be convicted. It's all a hoax. I'm not going to be convicted. I'm not going to jail. Sounds like Donald Trump may be resigning himself. He may realize that he has no way out, and then he might very well end up in jail. That's an interesting take on that because this is something we've never seen from Donald Trump. It tells me that all of this stuff going on over him and around him even though he acts like it's no big deal and he's perfectly confident, that's how a narcissist would react. But there are little cracks in the armor. And he's saying things that suggest he's thinking about it. He's worried about it. And I mean, we'll see what happens. But Donald Trump could conceivably run for president from prison unless there is an exception to that. Now, when we have the espionage charges, for example, we have the espionage charges, and that would be connected to the 14th Amendment. And if that conviction is tied to the 14th Amendment, then that would preclude him from running for any office, including the presidency. So that's why the January 6th indictments and trials and charges are so important. Those are the ones that would keep him from running for president. And I got to believe that Jack Smith is thinking about that. He's got that in the back of his mind, and he's going to make sure that not only Donald Trump is held accountable for all the shit he did, but he's going to try to stop that whole mess of him thinking he's going to run for the presidency. We're going to take a break here in a second, but I wanted to mention one other thing. Somebody asked Fani Willis, have you been talking or coordinating with Jack Smith? And she said, no. That seems weird. I don't know that Fani would lie to us necessarily, but it would make sense that Jack Smith and Fani Willis would kind of coordinate what's going on, mainly because, well, one's a state and one's federal, but there's some overlapping charges there. They almost have to talk to one another. I don't know if she just doesn't want anybody to know, or if she's worried that it would cause problems with the credibility of the case if she acknowledges she talked to Jack Smith. But there's got to be some coordination. They're both close to sending out indictments, and there is a difference as to who goes first and who goes second. So I got to believe they have talked before, but she says no. And that's kind of interesting. That's very interesting. All right, we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We're in the second half. We've got plenty of things to talk about, a lot of things going on now. Before I get started, my wife suggested to me, you know what you should do? You should eat a cookie while you're doing the podcast. I said, no, I'm not doing that. That's rude. It's just not something I would do, because I have a pet peeve. You ever watch TikToks? And occasionally I will see creators, some big creators, and they'll be doing their TikTok and they're eating their fucking dinner. They're having a sandwich or they're eating macaroni and cheese and whatever. And I always think to myself, you couldn't wait the 2 minutes to do the TikTok to have dinner later? I mean, is that some affectation that they want to do? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. You don't need to fucking eat while you're recording, whether it be a TikTok or a podcast. Just know that I've had a few of the cookies. They're fucking awesome. Just know as soon as I get done with this, I'm going to have some more because they're fucking awesome. But I'm not going to do it on the podcast. That's ridiculous. You know, nobody looks impressive while they're eating. They look fucking goofy. Why would I go out of my way to look even more goofy than I already do? All right, we were talking about Hunter Biden and this this guy that testified supposedly against Hunter Biden, but nothing really came out of it. 2 hours of testimony from a former associate of Hunter Biden's. Through the whole 2 hours, they failed to turn up dirt on President Joe Biden. Oh, big surprise. And that's according to Dan Goldman. He's a Democratic representative from New York, as I mentioned. He's also a former prosecutor, and he worked on one of the impeachments with Donald Trump. Now, if you've ever seen the videos of this guy in these meetings, tearing Jim Jordan and any one of the other Republicans apart, it's fucking fantastic. Go to YouTube, punch in Representative Dan Goldman, and you'll see some very entertaining stuff. I mean, it's not bad enough that the Republicans embarrass themselves without anybody else saying anything. Goldman just rubs it in their fucking faces, and I love it. Now, Republicans had hoped to interview this Devon Archer, which they did. He partnered in business with President's son, Hunter, and they thought it would connect Hunter Biden's wheelings and dealings to acts of corruption by the president. Now, again, I've said about Hunter Biden, he was a crackhead for a time. He was a fuck up. He seems to have gotten out of that. He didn't pay his taxes. He didn't do his taxes. He owed a lot of money, but he has paid it back. And he's probably, well, we don't know what he's going to get. He had a deal worked out, but then the deal got shelved. Now they got to come up with something else. I don't believe that he's going to go to trial. He will plead guilty to something and it will be done. But boy, oh boy, the Republicans are trying so hard to find some connection between Hunter Biden's wheelings and dealings. And, you know, Hunter, he's made some money and he's sat on a number of boards. I mean, everybody's talking about Burisma, the Ukrainian company, but he's been on the boards of other things too. It's not like this was a new thing that he just got. It wasn't like he was working at Dairy Queen one day and then dad's a vice president, so he got a big time job on a board. That's not what happened. He is an attorney. He had been on some other boards, and you know, maybe the fact that his dad is vice president had some bearing on it. That's fine. Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and Ivanka Trump, their whole fucking lives and their whole careers has to do with being related to Donald Trump. So this is nothing new, this Nepo babies, as they call them. You know, it may be fair, it may not be fair, but it's a realistic thing. And whether Hunter Biden played off his dad's fame and power, you know, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's not illegal, especially if Joe Biden wasn't involved in these deals. And clearly, we have yet to see any evidence that he was. So after hours of questioning in the Capitol office building, there were no smoking guns. This is what Goldman told reporters. He said, I think it's safe to say that after yet another 2 hours, there's still no connection of any of Hunter Biden's business dealings with President Biden. Now, of course, Biden has denied this all along. And, you know, whenever Donald Trump denied something, the Republicans will always say, well, he denied it, so let's move on. But apparently a denial from Joe Biden doesn't mean as much to Republicans as Donald Trump's denials do. Unfortunate thing for Donald Trump is there's a shitload of evidence. And with Joe Biden, there's zero evidence. They never talked about business. There was no bribe or no $5 million. Now, Archer apparently maintained that he never witnessed the elder Biden talking shop with his son. Never, ever. Why the Republicans didn't know this or expect this before they brought him in, I don't know. Maybe they did it behind closed doors so they could get him to say something that was a little questionable, and then they blow it up afterwards. But unfortunately, Dan Goldman, other Democrats are in this meeting. I don't know how they would think they'd get away with that. Now, as I said, Archer did describe several instances of the two Bidens talking on speakerphone in the presence of other business partners. They did talk. Now, the witness indicated that Hunter spoke to his father every day and approximately 20 times over the course of a 10-year relationship. Hunter may have put his father on the phone with any number of different people, and they never once spoke about any business dealings. As he described it, it was all casual conversation, niceties, the weather, what's going on. It wasn't a single conversation about the business dealings Hunter Biden had. And frankly, he didn't need to pull in Joe Biden in on the deals. The fact that he's connected to Joe Biden should give him enough credibility to get the deal done on his own. Whether you think that's ethical or not, it doesn't matter because it's not illegal. Ian Sams, a White House spokesperson, said this. You notice Joe Biden's not talking much about this. It's his point to stay out of the DOJ's business, and that's what a president should do, unlike what Donald Trump did. But Ian Sams said this: House Republicans keep promising bombshell evidence to support their ridiculous attacks against the president, but time after time they keep failing to produce any. In fact, even their own witnesses appear to be debunking their excuse me, debunking their allegations. And that's what I mean. It's always embarrassing for the Republicans. Now, the Huffington Post asked Goldman if the younger Biden put his dad on the phone to impress the people around him. And he said Hunter would put his father on speakerphone with whomever was at dinner, and there was no indication that he had any idea who was at dinner with them, Goldman said. Now, Jim Jordan, one of the Republicans in the interview room on Monday, refused to share details about the testimony, saying only that it had been productive. Yeah, that's what you're going to say. I got to tell you, if Jim Jordan saw any opening there, he would be ranting and raving and running that big fat mouth as much as he could. But again, he was disappointed. Again, he was embarrassed. They thought they had him. Like I said earlier, Fox News and some of the reporters on there saying, oh boy, here it comes. Devin Archer's going to be the guy that takes down Joe Biden. And once again, they look foolish. Now, why is Fox News saying that? Because the Republicans are telling them, oh, this is it. This is it. When does Fox News realize they're being duped every time they tell them this? It's fucking ridiculous. I can't believe that a media outlet, somebody who acts like a news organization, even though they're not, would not check into this shit, not do some research before you embarrass yourself, especially after you've just been sued for $800 million, lost the case for $800 million for lying about Dominion voting machines. You'd think you'd be a little more fucking cautious about this shit. Now, the House Oversight Committee chair, James Comer, who is another piece of shit, who has led the Republican investigation of what some lawmakers call the Biden crime family, said Sunday that Archer had an opportunity to be a hero. But they're mad because he didn't become a hero. He didn't become a hero because he didn't fucking lie. They would have loved it if he lied. He said, we know that Devin Archer has met and communicated many, many times with Joe Biden about Burisma and other things. No, you don't, because you have no fucking evidence. So this is going to be an opportunity for Devin Archer just to tell the truth. See, they're setting it up. They know it wasn't true. So when Devin Archer says that it's not true, they're going to say, see, we told you, he's a fucking liar. Now, Monday, Comer claimed Archer's testimony about the phone call confirms Joe Biden lied to the American people when he said he had no knowledge about his son's business dealings and was not involved. No, it doesn't. He could have been on the phone with this guy 3,000 times, but if they never talked about Hunter's business, then he would have no knowledge. That's not a fucking lie. That's a fact. Now, Comer suggested that Biden is compromised as a result of his son's foreign business deals. He has also promoted an unverified claim that Burisma founder Mykola Zlochevsky paid Biden a $5 million bribe when he was vice president and heading up Ukraine policy for the Obama administration. But here's the thing. Joe Biden's been very upfront with his taxes. If he had gotten $5 million, there would have been some paper trail. Even if he didn't put it in his taxes, it would go into a bank, it would go into something, and that would put up a red flag and somebody would be after his ass. But that's not what happened. Now, Archer told lawmakers on Monday that he was not aware of any $5 million payments to the Bidens, according to a source familiar with the testimony. This is all about trying to smear Joe Biden, which is kind of sad when you think about it. You've got an election coming up, 2024. You would think they'd be able to pick out certain things that Joe Biden did wrong that they would use in the election or the campaign leading up to the election. But they got nothing. Out of 2.5 years of Joe Biden being president, 8 years of being vice president, they found nothing. All they can do is pull something out from the past, something that Donald Trump's own FBI said there's nothing here, and try to turn it into something. But every time they try, it's a fucking joke. It's an embarrassment. Now, since we're talking about embarrassments, this seems like a natural segue to one of Donald Trump's biggest embarrassments, and that would be Donald Trump Jr. Of all people, after this Devin Archer thing came out, Donald Trump Jr., of all people, complained that Hunter Biden was trading on his famous name for a personal benefit. Well, Donnie, you got a podcast, right? A video podcast, and it's fairly popular with the dumb fucks around the country. If your dad wasn't Donald Trump, do you think you would have a fucking podcast? Do you think anybody would give a shit about your dumb ass? Again, it's projection. He's faulting Hunter Biden for playing on Joe Biden's fame when Donald Jr., Eric, and Ivanka's whole lives and whole business situations are because he's connected to Donald Trump. It's ironic that he would complain about that. So we've got we've got Don Jr. all coked up or crackhead up or whatever the fuck he's on. Because I got to tell you, when you see his videos, that dude's on something. I grew up in the 70s. I didn't do a lot of drugs, but I know a lot of people that did, and I know what it looks like. And that motherfucker is fucked up. He's fucked up. I'm surprised they allow him to even go on camera when he's in that state. I never knew what a tweaker was, but if I do know what a tweaker is, it's definitely Don Jr. Now, this story, I like this story because it shows Joe Biden doing something that the Republicans would do. He's claiming he's not, but we know what the fuck is up. Here's the deal. President Joe Biden has decided to keep U.S. Space Command headquarters in Colorado, overturning a last-ditch decision by Trump administration to move it to Alabama and ending months of politically fueled debate, according to U.S. officials. Now, the officials said Biden was convinced by the head of Space Command, General James Dickinson, who argued that moving his headquarters would now jeopardize military readiness. Dickinson's view, however, was in contrast to Air Force leadership, who studied the issue at length and determined that relocating to Huntsville, Alabama was the right move. Now, the officials spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss the decision ahead of the announcement. The president said believes that keeping the command in Colorado Springs would avoid a disruption in readiness that the move would cause, particularly as the U.S. races to compete with China in space. And they said Biden firmly believes that maintaining stability will help the military be better able to respond to space over the next decade. Those factors outweighed, and the president believed it would be there would be just minor benefits of moving to Alabama. Now, of course, this pissed off Alabama lawmakers. But you know who it pissed off most of all? Remember Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville or whatever the fuck his name is? Remember him? He's a senator from Alabama. He's the dumb fuck that's causing the log jam for raises and promotions in the military. He's the one that thinks he's smarter than anybody, and he's weakening our military. So he was counting on this move to Alabama, to his state. I brought Space Force to Alabama. And Joe Biden said, suck it, we ain't going to do that. See what I mean? That's something Donald Trump or the Republicans in general would do. You fuck with me, I'm going to fuck with you. And they fuck with Tommy Tuberville in this situation. Now, the location debate has become entangled in the ongoing battle between Tuberville and the Defense Department over the move to provide travel for troops seeking reproductive care. That's what Tuberville's why he's blocking everything. He doesn't like the abortion stance. And that's fine. You cannot like it. You can vote against it. But in the process, you're weakening our military because we now don't have a commandant for the Marines. We've got the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley. He's going to be retiring soon. And if we don't have a leader there, that's going to weaken things even more. So Joe Biden basically pulled the rug out from under Tuberville, and it's about fucking time somebody did. This guy is the biggest fucking dope anybody has ever seen. Now, of course, the U.S. officials said the abortion issue had no effect at all on Biden's decision. None. And they said the president fully expected there would be a different view on this matter within the Defense Department. Now, this force, the Space Force, was formally created in August of 2019 under Donald Trump. The command was temporarily based in Colorado, and Air Force and Space Force leaders initially recommended it stay there. In the final days of his presidency, Donald Trump decided it would be based in Huntsville. The change triggered a number of reviews. Well, isn't that strange? Toward the end of his term, Donald Trump changes his mind and wants to put it in Alabama. What do you think might have happened there? Think maybe Tommy Tuberville, a dumb fuck, went up to a dumber fuck and said, "Oh God, you're great. You know, it'd be really cool if we put it in Alabama. My people would love that. Why don't we do that?" And Donald Trump, all you have to do is tell him he's great and he'll do anything you fucking want. And that's probably how it went down. So Tuberville thinks he's a tough guy. I got him by the short hairs. I'm going to do this. And then Joe Biden says, "Fuck yourself. You ain't getting Space Force in Alabama." Now, Tommy Tuberville or Tuberville, whatever the fuck his name is, has got egg on his face and he looks stupid. But it's not surprising because Tommy Tuberville is fucking stupid. Now, you probably won't be surprised to know that Tommy's angry about this. "Oh, I'm so mad. How dare does he do this?" And he blasted President Biden's decision Monday to keep the headquarters in Colorado and overturning President Trump's decision to move it to Alabama. This is what he said. He said, "As soon as Joe Biden took office, he paused movement on the decision and inserted politics in what had been a fair and objective competition, not because the facts had changed, but because the political party of the sitting president had changed," Tuberville said in his statement. So Tommy's mad that he turned this into a political thing. Imagine that coming from a fucking Republican. Everything is political with the Republicans. Oh, you remember how they shut out Obama from appointing Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court? That was not political. Everything the Republicans do is fucking political. And when it gets shoved in their face and turnabout is fair play, they get butthurt and they start whining. Well, fucking whine away, Tommy Tuberville. You're a piece of shit. And we've only just started to expose how stupid you are. Wait till the January 6 indictments come out. I have a feeling you might be on the list. Now, of course, Tuberville is locked in a standoff with the Pentagon over the abortion policy, and he's holding strong. Good for you, motherfucker. You just lost a shitload of money for your state. Now, some officials have said Alabama's restrictive abortion laws played into Space Command's headquartered decisions, though the White House said it was motivated entirely about concerns that a major move would undermine military readiness. Well, that's a reasonable reason for them to choose it. But no one can tell me that the Tommy Tuberville thing didn't have some bearing on it. Tuberville wrote that it was shameful Oh, you motherfuckers, Republicans, know a lot about shameful shit because that's all you do. He goes on to say the Biden administration waited until Congress was in recess to make this decision, noting it came after the House and Senate passed versions of next year's defense budget. The two chambers still need to hammer out a final version of the defense budget. And he claimed the Colorado Springs did not even crack the top 3 sites for the headquarters in a review by the Air Force, trailing locations in Alabama, Nebraska, and Texas. Too bad, motherfucker. He went on to say this decision to bypass the 3 most qualified sites looks like blatant patronage politics, and it sets a dangerous precedent that military bases are now to be used as rewards for political supporters rather than our security. Wow. What you just said there, Tommy, is exactly what the Republicans always do. And it's kind of about the rule of law thing. You're all about rule of law when it applies to somebody else, but when it applies to you, not so much, not so much. Uh, and this is something I've always said. You know, when Donald Trump was in office and they were doing these ridiculous things, these stupid things, I always said, do they not understand that when they're no longer in power, other people will do this too because they set the precedent? You know, that's one thing. If I'm going to get in an argument with somebody, before I shoot off my mouth, I'll try to think, what do they have on me? What might they say in response? Don't want to open up that can of worms, so maybe I just hold my tongue a little bit. Not Tommy Tuberville, not the fucking Republicans. Now, Trump's initial decision to move the headquarters to Alabama also prompted claims of political motivations from Democrats. Alabama overwhelmingly voted for Trump in the 2020 election and has 2 GOP senators, while Colorado voted for Biden and has 2 Democratic senators. They're talking about political motivation. And we know Donald Trump, if you voted against him, you know, if there were states that had crisis and stuff, if they weren't Trump supporters, he would tell them to fuck off and not offer any support to them at all. That's the big difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a president for the entire country, whether you're in a red state or a blue state. And Donald Trump was not, which made him such a horrible president. Now, on Monday, Tuberville said the fight to bring the headquarters to Alabama, not over. Adding he hopes House Armed Service Committee Chairman Mike Rogers, Republican from Alabama, will continue an investigation into that matter. Yeah, by all means, let's have an investigation. We know how those investigations have gone for you so far, so fuck yeah, have an investigation. That should be fucking fun. Now, this next story has nothing to do with politics, and I don't usually talk about, well, sometimes I talk about things other than politics, but I felt compelled to talk about this one. This ended up being a pretty big story. Paul Reubens, he rose to fame playing the beloved Pee Wee Herman. He died on Sunday. Social media accounts tied to the actor announced on Monday. Reubens bravely and privately fought cancer for years with his trademark tenacity and wit. Posts on his Facebook's and Instagram account said he was 70 years old, far too young to die. Please accept my apology. He wrote this note prior to dying. Please accept my apology for not going public with what I've been facing the last 6 years, a statement from Reubens read. I've always felt a huge amount of love and respect from my friends, fans, and supporters. I have loved you all so much and enjoyed making art for you. Now, Paul was beloved and he will be terribly missed, his talent agent Donald Henry Burge said Monday. We know how popular Paul Reubens or Pee Wee Herman was. I was watching a video of him, and one of the early times when he was first on TV, he was on the Dating Game of all things. He was on it 3 times, and on the 3rd time he won. Now you know how Pee Wee Herman talks. How the fuck did he win? But he went from there to quite a bit of stardom. Now, Trump-lefucks. Trump-lefucks don't like anything that Democrats like. And you'll remember years ago, maybe decades ago, Paul Rubens, when he was younger, was arrested. He was in a porno theater and he was masturbating, actually. And these Trump-lefucks will come to me. Wasn't he the guy whacking off in the movie theater, trying to diminish Pee Wee Herman? Now, that is kind of a disgusting thing. I don't know what was in his mind, if he was doing drugs. And it happened, and he was arrested. He paid his penance for that. And now Trump-lefucks are trying to say, well, he's a bad guy because he did that. Well, it's not a good thing, but there are a lot of things in all of our histories that we wouldn't want to talk about again. I know I got a few, not in a movie theater, nothing like that, but still some things that might be embarrassing. And this Trump-lefuck was trying to push this on me. And I said, well, yeah, that's not a great thing, but it's not nearly as bad as being a co-defendant with Jeffrey Epstein in a lawsuit regarding raping a 13-year-old child. I'm just saying that's not as bad. You want to hang Pee Wee Herman out to dry for his act of indiscretion, but you want to ignore everything that Donald Trump has done. And Donald Trump is probably one of the most abhorrent human beings that ever walked the face of the earth. Now, some people might think I'm exaggerating, but you think about this. People will say he's the worst president ever, that he's committed crimes worse than any other former president. Dare I say he's committed more crimes. He's been more prolific in his crimes than any human. I mean, you think about it. When this is all done, he's going to have 100 plus, maybe 150 plus felony charges, amongst them obstruction of justice, espionage, all this shit, illegal retention of military documents. I can't think of anybody in history who has done as much, has been so egregious and blatant with their crimes than Donald Trump. It's not just that Donald Trump is the worst president ever. I'm willing to say that that he's the worst human ever, the most prolific criminal when it comes to government and treason and classified documents. Nobody has ever done that much shit. So if you want to make a comparison between Donald Trump and Pee Wee Herman, God rest his soul, I'll acknowledge that he was arrested, and that was years ago. And since that time, he's gone on to live an exemplary life. He was a decent and kind guy. He was talented. He's done some great movies. He did a lot of dramatic stuff. If you want to compare Pee Wee Herman to Donald Trump, come on, motherfucker. There's no comparison. Don't tell me about Pee Wee Herman if you're going to forgive Donald Trump of all his crimes, because he is clearly one of the worst humans we've had in this country, the most prolific criminal we've had in this country. Now, Donald Trump is starting to feel the pressure. You know how Donald Trump is. When he gets the target letter, he's the first one that lets everybody know. When he has the search at Mar-a-Lago, he's the first one that lets everybody know. He should keep his mouth shut. He would probably do better. But over the past 8 years, he has not been able to keep his mouth shut. And on Monday, former President Trump predicted that he would be indicted any day now as part of the special counsel Jack Smith's investigation regarding the 2020 election. That means it's coming soon. He's hearing something. He may even have a date in mind. And what he tries to do is he tries to take the edge off of it, get in front of it, and he thinks that helps him. It doesn't, but Donald Trump's a dumb motherfucker. He said, I assume that an indictment from deranged Jack Smith and his highly partisan gang of thugs pertaining to my peacefully and patriotically speech doesn't even make sense grammatically. Said, we'll be coming out any day as yet another attempt to cover up all the bad news about bribes, payoffs, and extortion coming from the Biden camp. Trump posted on Truth Social. This seems to be the way they do it. Election interference, prosecutorial misconduct. I know this tactic. I do know this tactic because it was played on me one time, and my brother for that matter. I told you about the years that I owned a recording studio. And we did music and we did syndicated shows and we did a lot of stuff. I was young. I was in my early to mid 20s when I was doing that. And one day and I did it without my father being involved because I really didn't want that. But after doing it for a while, and it was tough because money was tight, he came to me, he says, look, I don't want to be any involvement in your business. But I can give you some money. He had plenty of money. And in a weak moment, I said, yeah, okay, if you're not going to be involved, I'll take your money. Fuck, I'll take your money. So I took his money. My brother was working with me when we were working in the music business. He was a great help to me. And he took the lead on most things. And the music business was more him than it was me. I was kind of dealing with other things. But anyway, I took his money, and of course he weaseled his way in, and the way he did it was, he had a key to the he had a key to the office, to the studio, and he would come in, and because he loved spending money, I'd come in one day and there'd be a new conference table, a beautiful conference table, an expensive conference table. We had no need for a conference table. This was a recording studio, but there it was. And then there was a refrigerator full of alcohol. I don't say anything. I come in one time and there's a Leroy Neiman lithograph hanging on the wall. I mean, the place looked beautiful because he kept putting things into it. I never understood why he was doing that. I got two stories here. I remember one time when my wife and I weren't married and we were going out that night. I've told this story before, I think, but it's hilarious. And I had to go up to my studio to get a tape because I was doing a show someplace else. And I had to get the tape off my desk. So my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, we walk in the door and I notice the lights are kind of low and there's some music playing. I'm going, what the fuck? And then I see some women's clothes on the chair. I know exactly what's going on. My wife does not, my girlfriend at the time. And I walk in and I'm going to get a tape. My dad comes around the wall where the studio is. He says, hey, what's going on? I go, I'm walking into my studio to get a tape for a show I'm doing tomorrow. Yeah, don't come back here. I go, I wasn't planning to come back there. I just got to get the fucking tape and go. So we knew what was going on. I knew that there was some woman with him back in the studio. For God's sake, he had to be 45 years old at the time. I get a fucking hotel room for God's sake, but he didn't. He wanted to impress people with his studio, which wasn't his studio. Anyway, we walk out of the room. And my wife, who's my girlfriend at the time, looks at me and she looks aghast. She said, I saw the women's clothes on the chair. And I go, yeah, I know. Fuck it. Don't worry about it. Let's just get the fuck out of here. She goes, no, hold on a second. And she looks at me and she says, is your dad a cross-dresser? Yeah, honey, that's what that's all about. No, that's not it. She was a suburban girl. She was innocent. She was naive. And well, anyway, but my point of the story was this. My dad got in trouble with my mom, needless to say, with some of the things he was doing. I didn't tell anybody about that because I didn't want to get involved in it. I had my own life. But my dad did enough things that were pretty egregious that he and my mom never really got along after a certain amount of time. And she was calling him out on some shit. Okay. And there was really no answer, a good answer for him to give to get himself out of that. So you know what he did? because he knew my mom would bend to this if she bought it. What he did was he said, well, you think that's bad? Your two sons, me and my brother, you should see the shit they're doing. They could go to jail for that. Well, we didn't make enough money. We weren't those kinds of people. We weren't doing anything wrong, but he was willing to throw his kids under the bus to save his ass for the problems he had with my mom. And this is exactly what Donald Trump does. And this is why I've always said the moment Donald Trump took office, I knew exactly who he was, how he would act, what would happen, and how it would end up. And so far, I've been right all the way. And what I've always said, these people always end up by crashing and burning. My father did. He ended up not having any money. And as I've told you before, he ended up dying in a one-room apartment with no furniture, in his underwear, in a recliner chair. He just died right there all alone with nobody around him. That's how it ends up for these people. And that's how it will end up for Donald Trump. I promise you, he is crashing currently. He's going to fall to the earth and burn into cinders, and he will be absolutely destroyed. And he's not opposed to taking anybody else down with him. And much as my father tried to do it to his kids, he will do it to his kids as well. So anyway, we're wrapping up the Rational Boomer podcast. I hope you have a great day. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to the Rational Boomer podcast. I know it's an hour out of your day or a little bit more than an hour out of your day. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate people who actually look forward to and listen to and take that time out of their day. I'm taking 1/24 of your day minimum, unless you watch the TikToks, then I'm taking more. And the fact that you're willing to do that, that is a great honor. And I appreciate it very much. So have yourself a great day. And of course, we will talk to you again tomorrow.